Shalom. Thanks for joining me. I'm in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5, and starting in verse 17, where we left off. This is talking about how Jesus is fulfilling the law. Now, remember, Jesus is talking to his disciples. This is not a salvation sermon. This is not how to get saved. This is a message, a teaching that Jesus is giving to his disciples, his apprentices, his Talmudim, as it says in Hebrew. And here is the message that he says in this portion of the Sermon on the Mount. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Therefore, anyone who sets aside one of the least of these commands and teaches others accordingly will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. So this is a section where Jesus is talking about the law. Now, in Hebrew, that is Torah, and that refers to the first 5 books of the Bible. That's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. That is the section of the Hebrew scriptures called Torah, which means the law. And Jesus is saying, I didn't come to abolish the law. Abolish is an interesting word because in the Greek it means to disassemble, to deconstruct, to tear it apart, to just make sure that it comes loose. And it carries with it the idea of it coming loose in an embarrassing way. So Jesus said, I didn't come here to deconstruct and to destroy the Torah. I didn't come here also, he said, to destroy or deconstruct the prophets, which is Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, and so forth, Samuel, King David, so forth. Sometimes when Jews would refer to the totality of the scriptures, they would simply say the law and the prophets. And so this is what Jesus is saying. I didn't come here to deconstruct it, to tear it apart, to get rid of it. Instead, he said, I have come to fulfill it. Now that's an interesting word. In the Greek, it literally means to fill up, to finish off, to top it off. You know, you had a little bit to go, and now we completed filling it up, and so it's finished. And that's an important thing. It is completed. It is filled up. That's what Jesus is saying. There is something that the law lacked. It could not accomplish. I didn't come to destroy and throw away the law. Instead, I came to complete and finish what the law could not finish on its own. That's what Jesus is saying. And then he also says this. There's a tiny letter, the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet is called a yod, Y-O-D, yod. And it just looks like a little speck is what it really looks like. And Jesus is saying, not even that little bitty yod, that little tiny speck of the law, of the writing of the Hebrew, is going to go away. Because what he's basically saying is there is no commandment that is minor, that is irrelevant, that is nothing. You can disregard and ignore it. Jesus is saying all parts of the Torah are meaningful. All parts of the Torah are valuable. All parts of his law, of God's law, should be paid attention to. Now, he then said, but if you decide that some sort of a commandment is least, and then you just set it aside, you just say, we don't have to keep that. And you teach other people, you don't have to keep that. You just ignore that. It's okay. You know what he says? He says, you will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. He said, but then he makes a fascinating statement. So no, it's what he's saying there is every single part of the law is something you have to pay attention to. It's all equal. It's all valuable. It's all to be paid attention to and obeyed. He said, but I came to complete what the law couldn't complete. Talk more about that in another video, but here's the thing. He then makes the statement in verse 20, and this is the heart. This is the heart and the soul of the entire Sermon on the Mount. And it is this, your righteousness, if you're going to be my follower, you're going to be my Talmudim, you're going to be my disciple, your righteousness must exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, or you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, that's an interesting statement, claiming that righteousness has to exceed that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, because in the Jewish population of the first century, both the Pharisees and the scribes, who were the teachers of the law, they were regarded as like the most spiritual people, the closest people to God. That surely, if anybody was getting into the kingdom of heaven, it would be them because of their righteousness. And Jesus is saying, if you're going to be my follower, your righteousness cannot be on their level. You have to exceed that. And here's what Jesus is saying about this whole thing, because he begins now a series of teachings after this. Well, there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there's 6 series of teachings that Jesus is about to embark on that explain how righteousness in the kingdom must exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees and the scribes. He's about to do that in these next few sections, but here's what he's basically saying. The righteousness of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law is an external righteousness. It is not an internal righteousness. They are simply obeying rules and regulations, and they look really good because they're doing it. But that's not the righteousness that you will have if you're going to be my follower. Well, if you stick around starting with the next video, you'll find out more about that. Thanks for joining me.